Welcome to Game Storm, a podcast where I sit down with a new game designer, artist, or creative every episode as we design a new game from scratch. My goal is to bring the creative process of design to the forefront. Come join us if you're into wacky, small indie games, hearing designers talk about their process, or if you want to follow along with the episode and design your own game to one of our prompts. With me this week, we have Charlie Huth. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, and then we'll jump into the game making.
Okay, happy to be here. So yeah, I'm a game designer, theoretically. I mostly am a graphic designer and illustrator who moonlights as a game designer. But realistically, what I usually do with most days is try to keep the tiny human who lives in my house alive.
Sure.
In between those times, I am either drawing, designing, or game designing.
I feel very strongly that anyone who is designing games is a game designer, regardless of
Okay.
how much they feel like they are a game designer. I think that's a very important thing. That's actually one of the really big
Appreciate
things that I like about this series is like sort of demystifying the idea of game design
Yeah,
and
someone's gotta
demystifying the
do it.
idea of like what that is and what that means.
Mhm.
So that's actually a great thing that you bring that up. I'm spinning our prompt as we speak, so we
Oh,
can
hey.
jump right into it. And we did not get one of the esoteric ones that I was mentioning earlier.
Oh, no.
We instead got using every die from 1 to 20.
Oh.
This is sort of DCC. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Dungeon Crawl Classics has... I don't actually know if they use literally every die, but I know they use like almost every die. And they have like a whole thing about like adjusting die classes. I don't know too much about it. I just know that I've heard people reference it before. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that could go.
Yeah, I'm looking up a list of them now because it's been a while since I got the big box set out.
Well, and the my thought when I initially wrote this was that you would use like the non-standard dice too, like the
Oh.
D13s and the D14, because that was a big thing. I'm pretty sure that is literally what DCC does,
So
and
like
that's probably
literally
where.
every die.
Yeah. That's probably where this came to my head, is from them, if I'm being honest, because I think
Oh,
they have like a special dice set for that.
interesting. Because that's a game I have no experience with. So
I've also never played it or read it, to be fair.
okay.
I just have heard people talk about it a lot, so
That's how I do most of my learning about games too. So
yeah, this is okay, so it's not quite every die, but it's much more than standard. D3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 24, 30, and a percentile.
wow,
So
that's a lot of dice.
they're almost at 20 dice. They just don't have all of the ones 1 to 20. And there's something that's so funny to me about the idea of taking like a one-sided die and integrating that as part of a mechanic somehow. Like, I don't know what that is, but like, that just sounds very amusing to me. Like, what is the mechanic that uses a D1?
I didn't even know there was a D1.
Yeah, they look like noodles.
But like, is it 1 or 0 or is it just 1? Like 1
No,
result?
it's literally just one. You only ever have one outcome. They look kind of... Here, I'll send you an image of them. And that's why I think they would be kind of funny to use as part of a mechanic, because you would always get the same answer. So it would almost have to be like, I don't even know. I don't have
I love that though.
a strong idea of what that would mean, but like, I guess if in this system, we just did this in my last Game Storm episode
Oh
that I
yeah.
recorded, but it could be something where like the die degrade, and if it degrades down to a D1, you could still be forced to roll it, but you're just always going to get a 1, which, like, I don't know, maybe that's lame.
I don't know. I was almost thinking of the opposite of like where the die increase like as you improve or something. But
Sure.
it's interesting we both went to that. I'm trying to think. My other thought, though, which wouldn't quite work because now learning there's so many of them, was from Die, the comic book by Kieran Gillian,
Oh, okay.
where each, and I guess it's an RPG now too, but
Yeah.
kind of one of the gimmick is each character in each class has one dice that they use. Like I think the like fighter gets a D4, the cleric gets a D16, and like that's the one die you only ever use, and
Yeah.
it is somehow intrinsically symbolically linked to your class.
You could do like classes get a set of die.
Oh yeah, there's several. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess if there was like different dice rolls or checks, that could work.
Yeah. And that could almost be like classes get a set of die related to like stats that
Yeah,
are
kind of
appropriate for
in
each
place
one.
of stats, you get
And then
credit.
it like helps you do this like sort of breakdown of like what are these classes good at or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Hmm.
sort of unique. And you can have the like wizard whose strength stat is like a D1.
I kind of want to give everyone a D1, just like as your
Oh
death
yeah,
roll or whatever, or just like
sure. Well, and
critical.
that's a fair point. Like
Or like something gets really bad, you roll a D1.
that's a fair point. Like you could integrate. You don't have to use all via the prompt. We can interpret this broadly. You don't have to use all 20 in one part of the mechanic. You can
Yeah,
spread them
yeah.
out, right? So like you could have D1s through D4s as like your death die or whatever, and it like it goes down each time
Hmm.
you go down or something like that. I guess an important question along these lines is, what type of game are you envisioning when you think about this? Are you thinking about like an and maybe the better question is there a type of game that you have been really wanting to play or wanting to make, like more OSR, more narrative? Is there a theme or a setting? Because I think this mechanic's pretty open ended.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, admittedly, I've always been. This is a lot more dice heavy than I usually go because I'm
Yeah,
scared of math. So
reasonable.
but most of my experience has been in the like story game kind of end of the pool. But I've
Yeah,
recently been more interested in the kind of OSR styles in just their vagueness is like, here's a set of rules, apply this to like whatever module, there's a module you got, and just kind of go hog wild. Like I like the looseness of it and how modular it is. I've been trying to
yeah.
find,
Simple rules that are broadly applicable.
yeah, I've been trying to find a way to square that circle with the kind of game I enjoy, which is more like drama, character heavy feelings and stuff. But I also really appreciate a good dungeon. So I don't know.
That is one of the things that really drives my like home OSR game that I run,
Hmm.
is the because I've started to rotate systems, but I for a while I was just running Shadow Dark, and that was like
Hmm.
my taste of OSR. But just recently I ran with the same. It's kind of like a almost West Marches was my Shadow Dark game, was kind of like West Marches,
Yeah.
and I'm just keeping the same group of like 8 or so people that was consistently playing with that, and we're gonna be like swapping between different OSR systems.
Oh,
And
great.
I love like what you're saying, that idea of like bringing some of the less OSR styles of play into
Hmm.
those games, because I really miss those things when I play those games and don't have any of that.
Yeah, it's
So I do a lot of that when I run those games.
I'd be interesting to shadow that because that is something like I've gone back and forth on because there's technically nothing stopping you from playing like an NSR or like I guess that's kind of what NSR is, but there's nothing stopping you from
Sure.
like bringing in PBTA style drama into it. Or but there's also no framework, but I also wonder if that framework would it still be OSR? I don't know. I don't know enough about the schools of thought.
And a lot of these labels are like kind of overly broad, and
And so narrow at the same time.
so like there's so many different games that get like labeled OSR, but there's also, like you were saying, they're also so narrow at the same time in some ways. So it's like, does it really matter if it would still be OSR if it's like a fun, unique experience, right? Like I don't.
Mm.
So I like the idea of like this. It doesn't really have to be dungeon crawling, but like that sort of experience you get from a sort of dungeon crawlery vibe of like some of the OSR
I would
games.
be interested to explore that because something I keep going back to and haven't nailed yet is one like a dungeon explorer that I find not painfully dull. And also like classes. These are I guess psychic holdovers from when I played D&D when I was 13. But I've always loved like yeah, like specific archetypal classes where you like you're the wizard, you can shoot lightning or you can turn into a bear, like just fun little hooks that are kind of like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm this guy. I always
This is
enjoyed
almost
that.
like a this is almost like a marriage of OSR, trad, and narrative. Like you're just
I
mashing
just
all of
like
it
all the
together.
things. Just
Yeah,
throw
put
them
it
all
all in a pot.
together. I
Yeah,
This is why I like cook. My favorite food is stew.
yeah.
I love cooking a good stew. I guess I game design in a similar way where I'm just like, oh yeah, let's bring in some dice, let's bring in some character
Yeah.
classes, let's bring in some playbooks, let's mish it all together and see what happens. But I was gonna say the two things that stood out for me from my time in trad in the trad mines were character classes and just the idea of the dungeon. Like I love the idea of this dungeon as a place,
Yeah.
as just this it's a character in itself. It has its own kind of like malice and moves and like ways it can affect you. And I've always been really interested in places as character, and the dungeon
Yes.
is such an obvious way to do that.
And
I,
so classic too.
I've never found a way to do it that I was happy with though.
Yeah, it's hard. I think Mothership does a really good job of it, even though that is very different in theme.
Yeah,
Well, and it also depends module to module, but I think some of the modules do a really good job
I,
of
I will
like,
say the modules have really nailed the like flavor and intensity that I look
yeah.
for.
And some of them do a really good job of like the sort of place as character thing where
Hmm.
you can really get like this sense of the place you are inhabiting, and oftentimes like the ways in which that affects both the players but also like the like sort of oftentimes otherworld entities that inhabit
Yeah,
them.
I think that does lend itself well to horror in a way, because horror is very like upfront with its themes and its threats. So that makes sense that Mothership does a good job of that.
Yeah.
Just because I think when you get down to it, horror is like 80% atmosphere. So
Yeah, yeah. So some of the things we're talking about here, it sounds like the thing we need to one of the things we need to think about first is like, what do strong archetypal classes look like in this system, and how do they relate to a broad die set?
interesting.
That, at least that's one of the places my mind goes first.
Yeah.
I wrote out some sort of phases, and these are not by any means set in stone in the notes here, but just sort of to get my brain thinking in the context of like, what are the sort of phases of play here
Oh
of
yeah.
like, if I'm
No,
going to
that's
sit down
great.
and run, with like the first being like strong archetypal classes, so like character creation. I
Hmm.
guess that's strong archetypal classes slash character creation.
Yeah.
And the second being like, what happens before the dungeon crawl, because a lot of
Mm,
times in games there is something that precedes just like, boom, I'm in the dungeon. That's not always true.
that's a good
it
point.
it's especially important though, I think, if you want some of that like narrative flair, because like in
Hmm.
Shadow Dark you can just jump straight into the dungeon and it doesn't really matter, you can just like hand wave the rest of it,
Hmm.
and like that's fine. But like in something where you want narrative flair and you want those strong archetypal classes to matter, you need some of that pre
Yeah,
element.
you need stakes. You need concept. You need context to exist in
And
it.
like character tie-in and stuff as well. You had mentioned like the character who just like has a big sword and the character who can like turn into a bear and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Do you feel like this is just a sort of thing where it's like, oh, warrior, wizard, druid,
thief.
like that
I
sort of classic?
I'm always inclined when I make projects is to one choose like a kind of a generic chassis and then just throw a really weird theme on top of it.
Hmm.
So I think the like warrior fighter thief is a good archetypes to start with because they each go back to how the player would interact with threats or the dungeon. Um, like I think they're very verb based,
Yeah,
and I think that's a useful starting point. But I'm also much more interested in like flavor and like
yeah, yeah.
theme. So my first thought would be like, what is an interesting spin to put on a dungeon crawler? And I don't know. My thoughts go a couple of places with that because there's always a lot of ways to do it.
Okay. Is so so we have like warrior, thief, druid or priest, like a wizard or mage type
Hmm.
stuff. Do you think like in the theming side of it there should be like, are you thinking it should be like the sort of setting is what gives the sort of big twist mostly?
I'm still working that out. I think they're really linked. Like if you look at Heart or something, which is
Uh-huh.
kind of like weird horror dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
It has like, your wizard guy, your fighter guy, your ranger
Hmm.
guy, but they're all really weird and terrifying to fit the theme. And that kind of goes in with the setting. They all kind of tie back to the setting.
For sure.
So I think setting is something. I am also going to. I don't know if we necessarily want to go this direction, but I'm just going to lay this on the table and see where it goes. I have been fascinated with road trips, and there's several projects I've done.
Dungeon crawl road trip.
Yeah, so I'm just that's where I've been for the past 2 years. I'm like, how can this be a road trip? And so my first thought, of course, with this like kind of like OSR dungeon crawl is like, but what if it was a road trip? And I am still figuring out what that actually looks like.
Okay, hold on. So you mentioned heart, which makes my brain go in like weird directions. So so what if this is like a dungeon road trip to get to like, traveling cross country kind of vibes,
Hmm.
but in this world everyone travels through dungeons for some reason.
Mm,
So you have like, and maybe there's some reason for it, like we can come up with some sort of MacGuffin reason that
that
like
is interesting. Like the travel is through dungeons.
these
That
are old underground highways that were constructed by the dwarves or something. I don't know. That's
that
kind of
also
boring.
reminds me of. I have two thoughts here for connections. One is the movie Labyrinth from the 80s, where just the whole world is a dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way it is. And the second thought is, and I feel like this has some tie with OSR style overworld travel, but like Oregon Trail, the old video game,
Oh, that's a
also
great.
from the 80s, I guess. But that just kind of like that's what I think of where if I like combine like OSR style play and road trip, it becomes some really sad Oregon Trail playthrough.
So it's interesting that you mention Labyrinth because I was just thinking, have you ever heard of the Broken Earth? No, that's not the name of it. I think it's called the Broken Earth series
The
by
book series?
by N.K. Jemisin.
Yes, I have been meaning to read those for about a decade. I will get around to it someday.
I was just thinking about the so no spoilers because I don't want to spoil anything, but just
Mhm.
the fact that in that world there's like an element of like apocalypse, and there's all these
Mm,
little like human enclaves or whatever.
yeah.
And I was just thinking about that as like you could probably find some cool tie-ins between like the sort of the world as a labyrinth idea and this like
Mm.
almost post apocalypse fantasy OSR vibe where you kind of like bind those together.
Yeah, it really does lend itself to kind of like bastions of bastions of civilization in a dark setting. And I just looked at the one die. I love it. It's terrible.
It's pretty bad.
So,
So we've got sort of I really like the direction of that. This sort of like post-apocalypse of labyrinths. This sort of Oregon Trail vibe through what is this sort of like worldwide dungeon. I also really love the idea of like your characters all being in some way, they don't necessarily literally have to be related, but being very like closely tied.
mm-hmm. I just had a flashback to my childhood and childhood spent too much time playing video games, which was the game called Crystal Caravan, Final Fantasy for the GameCube.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna look it up because I don't think I've played that. Crystal Chronicles, the GameCube one.
Yes, Crystal Chronicles. It has a caravan, so I got the name mixed up.
Yeah, I see this sort of like caravanning scene.
So, if I may, briefest of rundowns. The world there was like an apocalypse, and the world is covered in this poison mist that is held back by these crystals.
Okay.
And every town has a crystal that makes it a safe space. You have to recharge these crystals by taking a cup to these different like trees hidden deep in dungeons, and then bring back the crystal juice to keep the crystal going.
Crystal shoes.
So you're there. So every town has these things called crystal caravans, which are these adventurers that go out from the town and then go to these dungeons to get the juice to keep the crystal going.
That's that sounds so goofy, but it's such a good conceit.
Yeah, and it always stuck with me because it's a reason to go into the dungeon.
Yeah, it's a good one too.
Yeah, and it immediately gives you a tie because you have a hometown, you have a base, you have a reason to go into the dungeon, and keep going into dungeons because like the crystal needs this every year, whatever.
Yeah, and you presumably care.
And the game is you just kind of play through the passage of time, and like the dungeons change as the years pass, and then your town changes as the years pass. It's really probably not a good game if I went back to play it, but it really stuck with me.
Sure, yeah. I've had a couple of GameCube games like that where
Yeah.
I it just stuck with me, but when I've played it, gone back and played it, I've been like, not as good as I remember, but man, is it
Yeah.
nostalgic. So I can
Yeah.
respect that. Love that idea though of like the close tie to the town and like the repeated overtime journey into the dungeon
Hmm.
that it like changes over time. That's a really cool idea too.
Yeah. There was some cool ideas there, and I was always like, there's something here, and I really like the feel of just the travel. And like there was like a kind of like a passage of time as you travel through the world and get further away from home.
Because you have to go further to get the crystal juice each time, isn't it?
Yeah, because they only replenish like every 3 years or something.
Oh, okay.
So you had to every 3 cycles you had to do a new dungeon or different
Huh.
dungeons.
Interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if there's something with that where like we could set up something where like you are adventurers from a town.
Hmm.
You have some close tie to this town. This is post-apocalyptic. I think we're both kind of moving
Yeah.
in that direction theming wise. There is something where you have to go venture forth to save your town and
Hmm.
you have to like do it repeatedly. I love the idea of like you go repeatedly and the dungeons are different, or like the theming is different each time because you're
Mm-hmm.
going to different places.
Hmm.
And there's something super cool about like the the ways that that could create really close ties between your party.
Yeah.
And then you could have a whole phase. So the pre-dungeon phase could be the like around town or whatever. That's a bad name for it, but
Yeah, but
the
like I get what you're saying, the home base sort of thing.
yeah, and then you go on your little crawl out into the world, and
Mm-hmm.
then you come back and you're like, "Oh, now we have like a year where we can spend doing like role play vignettes and getting all that
Mm-hmm.
narrative juice."
Hmm.
That's super interesting. I wonder if this is something where we should I hate that this idea just popped into my head, and I think it's definitely a bad idea,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna say it anyway, just because people are probably gonna hear it and be like, "Wow, that's a stupid idea," but I don't know, it might make people think. So this only reason this popped into my head is because we have a prompt for using a large breadth of die.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is the prompt, isn't it?
But what if we just like tacked two resolution systems together, and when you're in town you had a completely different resolution system than when you're out in the dungeon, and we could do like very rules light OSR resolution when you're away,
Yeah.
and very rules light almost like simplified moves from PDBTA when you're like, oh,
Oh,
at
that's
home.
fascinating.
Anyway, I think that's maybe bad, but it just popped into my head. So
I feel like I've seen things like that, and it's like tempting. But building off of that, now that I know every die, or remember that every die has to be used,
yeah.
what if the dungeon used die?
Oh, that would be a really cool way to make it
And like,
unique every time.
yeah, that's like what causes the different seasons is you're kind of using a set of different dice, either tables or how many rooms, or like, or you could do, oh, interesting. You could do like for generating what's the dungeon is or what's in the dungeon, you could just do a big table and then like have different dice roll on it.
Yeah, I wonder if we should like I liked the idea too of having like characters have different dice for different abilities.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a scenario where we should like figure like reserve some die for the characters, then figure out what our dungeon die are, and then figure out what we have left over and kind of see where we are just for like sort of a rough. Are we thinking we want stats for characters?
That getting back
I
to
know, isn't it
mechanics. Oh,
hard?
oh, it's
I know.
that's
And I'll also like I'll pitch you this, and I don't know how much OSR stuff you've looked at, but there's a bunch of different styles of resolution in
mhm,
OSR games. Like some of them play to the more trad like D20 systems
mhm,
like D&D, where you're just rolling a D20 plus bonuses and you're trying to get over like
mhm,
an AC or something. Then there's like the Cairn styles,
mhm.
which are and like Mouse Ritter, which are like roll under systems,
Oh yeah,
and
that,
like Bastionland and stuff, where you have a stat and you just need to roll under that stat with a D20 or similar. And we could go with like a roll under system where you have that die and you have a stat based on something related to that die, and you're just trying to roll under it. That could potentially be like work out. And then there's also like some other categories where like obviously like Mothership is quite different because it's a
mhm.
D100 system, and I don't think we want to go quite there because that's pretty far
It's
outside of what.
too many dice.
Yeah,
Hmm.
my gut kind of immediately leans for like mechanical resolution in the dungeon towards roll under. And I think the only reason is in playing Cairn and Mouse Ritter, I find a roll under system to be very simple and quick.
Okay, so this is my brain going off again. An idea I've tossed around in the past was character or like the character classes have roles that change the dungeon or have like abilities.
Oh, sure.
So like you open a room, and then you got like some sort of mystic who's like they deal with the spirits, and so they do a move to be like, or uh whatever, to be like, okay, are there spirits in here? And it kind of, their role would then dictate what is in the room.
So the wizard would have like a die, and if they roll under or roll over or 2d6 or whatever it is,
Hmm.
their success, failure, or mixed or whatever it is would determine what the answer is.
Or they roll on a table or something. I haven't really decided.
I think that is, well, and this brings up another question that we always come to in these, which is, does this game need a GM?
That is interesting. I had assumed originally, because I was like, oh, it's got lots of dice. Of course, it's going to need a GM.
But if we go in the direction of what you're saying right now, you could use like die tables plus narration from the person who rolled plus die tables for the dungeon
Hmm.
to basically just be the facilitator. So it could be sort of solo RPG-ish in that sense.
Hmm. Kind of a group generated.
Yeah.
Huh. That's very interesting, but I'm not quite sure if that's the right move for this.
And we don't have to answer that question right away. We can ponder it as we continue to build stuff out, but it's something worth keeping in mind as we build on things.
Hmm. So we got post-apocalypse. You're going into a dungeon, into different dungeons. I think maybe in the efforts of simplicity, not doing not doing um not doing too much of the maybe some changing of the dungeon, but not too much, to keep it, because I like kind of the rules lightness, and just the idea of like characters get some die that does different stuff, and then the dungeon gets all the die and that does various knobs and whistles that do the dungeon. So
Sure.
I think in the effort, in the interest of embodying the dungeon, there should be a dungeon master of some sort.
I think if that's the goal, then I think that is true. That is the direction we need to go.
Yeah.
It sounds like if we're going to go that direction, then characters should be more framed around something like stats. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be truly stats, but something like a sort of strength, a sort of strength, dex, will kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of
Um,
Karn route.
and then that can be sort of extrapolated however we want for other stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but I do think I like the idea that like it's all well and good if we have stats here, and it's fine to have that like that sort of like simplification isn't the right word, but like it's fine to not have like depth within their abilities
Yeah.
because our depth can come from the dungeon, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think that makes sense. I still, part of me wants to give each class a little juice in terms
Yeah,
of some sort of ability or like something other than statistical
I agree.
difference. And maybe that is in the form of they each get like their own die that is unique to that class.
Ooh, maybe the rest of their stats are just numbers and then they get a unique die each
Yeah,
that does
or that
something.
die does something, or is like, or it could be added on, or is like rolled on a table whenever you enter a room in the dungeon. I hmm. I just really like the idea of like dice being a signifier of each class and having some sort of symbolic.
Depending on how we decide to do resolution for stats, our stats could just be dice. Like I like strength for the fighter could be a d20
Mm-hmm.
and dex could be a d10 and will could be a D4.
Yeah.
And like
Let's
that could also be, and I think that's a pretty like exciting way of building this stuff out.
let's talk about resolution then.
Yeah,
Um,
that's I think a good place to go.
I guess what are you thinking would designate a success? You talk about roll over, roll under.
Um, well, so I think it sort of, I think if we do like dice as stats, um, then I think we sort of have to decide if we want to do like a sort of like target number thing where like the GM sets a target number to hit
Yeah.
and then they roll to hit it. I think that's how like Kids on Bikes does it,
Oh yeah, they
which
use a bunch of dice, don't they?
because yeah, they don't use all the middle ones, but they use like the normal die categories.
Yeah.
So you might have someone who has like a D20, and then you might have someone else. I actually don't know. I don't remember how they set there. And they also have exploding dice. Oh, we should use exploding dice in this game because some
Okay.
people might have like small categories, or small. They might be using a small die. I'm trying to look up how what Kids on Bikes resolution is real quick because I don't. I mostly just want to know how the target number gets set, and I don't think I own Kids on Bikes. So yeah, you have brains, brawn, fight, flight, charm, and grit,
Okay.
and each of those is assigned a die. And then players say what they would like to do. The GM sets the number they must beat and what stat should be used. Okay,
Okay.
so
So pretty kind of
I
hippie.
I would assume that they have like guidelines within their system on how the GM should set stats based on, or set target numbers based on like who it's going to, but maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just it just is independent. But I
Yeah, it
was
does
thinking that
seem
that's how it
hard
was.
because it seems like you would get very easily into situations unless you have like things that give bonuses, like um a fighter would never do a will over 4, so that really
Well,
precludes them from a lot of things.
that's where Kids on Bikes having exploding die comes in, because then
Oh, yeah.
the D4 has a much higher chance to explode.
Okay, and
And
then get a
exploding dice doesn't work with a D1. I don't know how you do that because it just is always exploding.
that's fun. I really there's gotta be
There's got to be something fun you can do with that.
I just want that like to be the ultimate end of the road is you roll the D1 dice and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, that feels like it should be like when someone dies or something like
Mhm.
that, or like something really dramatic.
Yeah, like
But
I want it to be the highlight. Like it's all down to this.
yeah, but I think the sort of Kids on Bikes style resolution makes the most sense here,
Hmm.
rather than having like a sort of, especially if we're gonna have a GM. If we weren't gonna have a GM, I think there's a couple of other ways we could do it, but where we could like have set our own stat numbers based on like a couple of die rolls or something like that, and do like a roll under.
Oh yeah.
I think it makes more sense to do something like Kids on Bikes here.
Yeah, and that's interesting with the exploding dice because that answers the balance kind of a- aspect I was concerned about giving each one different dice.
Yeah, and are we going to restrict ourselves to not use the same die twice when we're setting these class stats?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's good. That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Yes.
Just because
I
that's
was
like
like, we got to
fun.
get them all in.
Yeah. It's also just
Um,
like goofy, you know? So,
I'm almost thinking, what if we gave? So we have the three stats. What if each class had its own unique stat?
oh,
Like
okay.
wizard would have a magic or something,
Sure. Yeah.
something to
So,
draw on rather than will. I don't know how that'd be complicated. I just I like it. The one of the things I like about classes is when they have unique resources or ways to
Yeah.
shape the world or connections. So having in this very dice centric thing, it feels like having a dice to represent that would be the way to go.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so and then that's probably always going to be your best stat too.
Probably. Yeah, so
But we
God.
have a lot of dice to pick from. So, what is a fighter's stat that is
So
more unique than strength?
I think what could be interesting here is they each kind of represent an outside reserve they're drawing on. So like
Interesting.
wizard
That's
mage is
true for wizard and priest or whatever.
yeah, and like rogue you could have it be like gear or connections or network or organization if they're part of
Network
a
is really good.
syndicate
I like
even.
that. Yeah.
Um and then so for fighter it could be kind of like almost like oath or militia or like uh army type words.
We could call it oath and reframe it to like knight. Maybe it shouldn't be knight, but something that's like knight in the sort of space of knight.
Yeah, a sort of like idealistic warrior.
I'm trying to think of a good word for that.
Yeah, this is
It's a
always I find the most interesting and hardest part of RPGs is just finding the right words for things.
it's yeah. But when it hits, it really hits.
Yeah, and I think this is probably why I've played around, have more experience of story games than Trad or OSR because I could do words all day, but you start throwing numbers at me and I get scared. Um,
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm just looking at like paladin synonyms. Hierophant
yeah.
is a great one, but it's not really what I was going for.
Oh, hero thing.
Champion.
Champion. That makes sense for kind of like a small scrap. It's got a scrappiness
Yeah.
that fits as kind of post-apocalyptic town.
Okay, so and then like thief slash rogue, so it's almost like it almost gives like spy vibes.
Yeah,
To have
I'm
like
always
network.
interested in with like the rogue, seeing how far I can push it away from guy who steals shit.
Yeah.
Um, because I just don't think that's very interesting. So I'm always like looking for like organized crime, spy, um, just like what are different ways because rogue is such a vague thing, and like everyone steals stuff in D&D.
Yeah, yeah. What what's a good word for someone who is like sort of that organized criminal but is like part of a network. Um
um hmm so organized criminal does kind of indicate a network. Let's see.
cuz that's like organized criminal is a good way of like saying that, but it's not very snappy.
Yeah, I mean there's mobster, classic. um
That's very funny. It might change the theming of our setting a bit.
it would. Oh darn, that is, yeah, it's probably
I
not
could put it
the
for now.
best, but oh that would
There's
be
like
so
Pope for
fun.
the holy man. We've got the champion, the mobster, the Pope. This is like Mad Max post-apocalypse vibes more than, well, maybe not even quite Mad Max. That's maybe a little too intense. I guess I was thinking more like somewhere between Fallout and Oregon Trail.
Okay, yeah, no, we can
It's
work
like
with that.
kind of modern Oregon Trail.
I mean, I'm always interested with that blending of like how modern can we make fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
That's a fun space to me. So,
I guess we could just call the holy person the bishop,
yeah, that makes sense.
and
And
then
Weirdo, the wizard. Uh,
Wacky guy.
Wacky
Uh,
guy, laser hands, McGee. Hmm. I guess it depends on what we decide, whatever magic is, but it's usually just some sort of like weird force. Um,
Hermit.
Hermit. Oh yeah.
That fits with the vibe of all the other words we have.
What is? Oh, interesting. So Hermit,
I think
Bishop.
mobster is our one that fits least with this, but
Yeah.
we'll work on it.
What if we just called it the Rook? Kept with it.
The rook
Yeah,
for the bishop or for the mobster?
for the mobster, because it's both a chess piece and like relative to a crow.
Sure, yeah.
So that
It
kind
might be
of
a little bit too esoteric, but I get what you're going for. My only concern is it's a little more esoteric than our other names here.
yeah, I guess. And
But
yet
I don't
you're
think
like,
that's necessarily bad. It fits the vibe more than mobster.
yeah. I don't know.
So
I like it for now.
yeah, let's keep it,
We'll
and we can
see.
always come back to it.
This might get progressively more esoteric as it goes.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a risk.
There's
Um,
no problem with that. I kind of think everyone's like
Special.
special skill should be a d20.
I think, yeah, it would get weird if there was. I think with the rating system we're using, it would get weird if they were different.
Yeah. And then we can have like breakdowns amongst all the other stats on like who has like, because
Yeah.
it's easier to do like breakdowns in the other stats where like, oh, this person's better at strength, but the other character makes up for it because they're like better in these two other categories or whatever. Um, and that means our 20 is taken care of, so we don't have to use it anywhere else.
So in an OSR context, that's a core resolution. Is there
Yeah, we can
much?
worry about specific die numbers later because that's
Yeah.
something
Is
we
there
can
much
use.
secondary like stats or information?
Well, so generally, if we're gonna have like combat and stuff, generally there would be some kind of health.
Yes.
Now that doesn't necessarily have to be explicitly HP. That could be like you do damage to stats. That's sometimes a thing in like Mouse Ritter and Karen and stuff like that. There's like health, but then past health you do damage to stats and you only die when the
Yeah.
stat goes to
Yeah.
zero. But that's a little harder here unless we start like reducing die categories and stuff like that, which is possible and maybe interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I was gonna say my first thought was if we changed network to something more internal, like cunning or something, and
Sure.
then made that the health dice.
Oh. So when you're out of magic, holy, cunning, or oath, you
Yeah,
die.
yeah, or you're out in some capacity.
Yeah.
And then certain things would target that.
So combat damage is your unique die. When it reaches zero, you die /are unconscious
Mhm.
slash whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Uh, for around town,
Mhm.
all I wrote here was at least one vignette per each player. I don't
Yes.
know that this needs too much framing.
I think
Um,
for now, yeah, just keeping it kind of loose makes sense.
primarily, my thought is like scenes on how the players relate to each other, scenes on how the players relate to the town. I think those
Yeah.
are the two like primary big ones. And then the dungeon has a die pool, and we'll
Hmm.
have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we'll have 13 of our die covered by the player classes
Okay, and that's out of 20, so there's 7 die left.
at least, yeah. Which, and and we can reuse some of the same die,
Yeah.
but we'll need to at least cover. And I think it would be really cool if I actually think it would be cool if there was like some sort of when you go down system that used like a D4 kind of thing.
Hmm.
So what I was thinking is, and this might be too much of like an extension to play, when you reach zero, you would like go unconscious or whatever, you
Yeah.
roll a d4, and if it isn't like its highest number, you stay up, but then it like reduces die category, and you keep doing that every time you go down until you get to a d1, and then you just know you're gonna die.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to use the D1. I
And
sure
it's
let's
kind
go
of
for it.
funny. It could just be like maybe it's just it starts at a D2, or maybe it starts at a D3
I
rather than a
think let's
D4.
start at D3.
Okay.
3 is good.
Because I was like, I said D4 because it's like just what popped into my head, but then I was like, that means you have to die 4 times before it
It's
actually
a lot of
happens.
time.
So yeah. Well, I guess it would be 3 times before it actually happens. So now it's just 2 times before it actually happens, which is like not that unreasonable. So well, and you still can roll the highest number right away. It's a 1 in 3 chance and then a 1 in 2 chance. So um but that adds a little drama, and it uses the D1, which is kind of fun. So
So let's see. So we have the characters broadly. I was just spitballing things that make up a dungeon. Um,
we
yeah.
could roll goal as well.
Oh, that's a good one. So are we thinking just kind of like, hmm,
Because I think like the crystal MacGuffin from the Final Fantasy game that
yeah,
you were referencing is like obviously pretty good, and it might be good to have something similar here.
yeah,
But I think it would
or
also
version.
make sense to be like, maybe it's not every year or multiple years that you're going into the dungeon or whatever. Maybe it's like, oh, we ran out of some other supplies that we needed,
Yeah,
and we
some
can get them
sort
in the
of
dungeon.
goal, like you need supplies or something. But something, a need from the village.
So like the goal table could really just be like, it could just be a sort of D3 table where it's like uh, MacGuffin, supplies, weapons.
Hmm. Or just like treasure.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, treasure is a better way of saying that because it's more general.
Hmm.
And then the MacGuffin can be sort of like we just come up with some sort of setting thing like
Yeah,
the
setting thing goes here.
crystal.
It says life-giving plot device. Um,
That's a good way of saying it.
I'm trying to think. What are ways that dungeons can use dice? Um, you could have it where each table or each dice has a table and like rolls different things. I don't know. I'm kind of trying to think if there's like a more interesting resolution for that though, than in which the almost in which that the like there's specific dice that are rolled for the dungeon. And I like the idea of using different dice for different trips into the dungeon.
What do you mean?
Maybe there's a table for each of these things, but you change what dice you use for it based on what you go to it. So there's like a
Oh, so you have like a D6 table, but you can use any die for it or whatever.
like say you have a D20 table of monsters and you're
Yeah,
going in and like okay, this is a season third season. So I'm going to use a D12.
sure. Yeah,
So
that's really
there's
cool.
12 different monsters. And then like as you keep going into the dungeon just the dice increase. And then it's kind of a depth crawly kind of thing.
That also creates an interesting thing from a design perspective, where like you You could put your designs for all of your like interesting late game content into the back half of your like D20 tables.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
And
guess it's kind of going off of how death crawls work, where you just keep going, like
yeah.
where you kind of load it from front to back with different layers of stuff. I th- that would make sense. I'm
So something else I was thinking, and I really like that idea, but I wonder if room count should not be a table. And the reason I'm thinking this is
no.
I almost
Yeah.
think that instead die should play into either die or just GM fiat should play into when the goal is found within the dungeon, so that the actual like room count is sort of up like an element of play rather than something that's determined ahead of time.
I like that. I like that a lot. I do. As beholden as I am to maps and like going through the layouts, it can be such a slog to like go through each room by room of a dungeon.
Well, and I really like, I think it would be cool if there was like a sort of per room thing, honestly, which maybe this is me being a little too like a an almost per room, just kind of getting in that similar mindset where like the GM in any room could roll like a couple of different dice that would determine like info about the room if they wanted to, or just look at those tables to pick stuff. This
Yeah,
Shadow Dark, and well, I shouldn't just say Shadow Dark. It's very OSR with the lots of roll tables to
yeah.
determine things about what's going on. So like if we just had like a handful of D6 tables even that were like this is what your room is, or even D20 tables like what you were saying. I don't know that we want to come up with full D20 tables here, but that's a neat idea for what that could be, because then the GM could choose a dice to roll on that, and we could do a similar thing if we did D20 tables where we do a design of like the stuff further down is more extreme and the stuff higher up is less extreme, and if you choose a bigger die you have a higher chance of getting the extreme stuff or whatever.
I like that. I also think going back to, and maybe this is a bit of a diversion, but going back to the goal. What if the goal of each round of the dungeon is decided by like a die? And every room you're in, every time you enter a new room, the die is rolled, and the size of the die corresponds to the value of your goal, and the each room you complete adds like a +1 to the next die roll.
Oh, interesting. So can walk me through what going into a room would play like then.
Okay, so hmm, I'm trying to consider all the other things. So you would go into a room, you would roll what kind of room it is on like a master list
Yes.
or a big list, and then roll on like your inhabitants or your complication on a big list, and then you would roll the gold dice, which would be like for like food. You're getting food. That'd be like a D6. So you add a d6, roll a d6 plus how many rooms you've been in. So if you've been in 3 rooms, it's a d6 plus 3. If it's a 6 or above, the goal's in the room.
Oh, so you're not rolling the goal die. I see. Okay, I was misunderstanding. You're saying you're rolling the goal die to see if your goal is there, and then as you go through the dungeon, you have a higher chance of getting it.
Yes.
I'm on the same page now. That
Okay.
is very interesting. Okay, I'm glad I asked that question because I was a bit confused, and I
No,
am
no.
not anymore. Okay, so how do you determine what the goal die is? Is that based on these? Would these determine what the goal die is here?
Yeah,
The
yeah. I
like
would think,
actual.
yeah.
So like
Uh,
MacGuffin would say like this is a D4 or something because you want it to take a while or something, or you want it to be hard. And supplies might be like a D10 because it's easy, and I don't know, treasure might be a D6 or something.
well, if the goal is to get the highest roll, wouldn't a d10 make it harder to? get to?
I guess if we have exploding die, yeah. I was just thinking in the context of it has uh, it can roll higher.
Oh,
Um, so like you have
oh,
a
I see what
chance
you're
of being
saying.
able to, because if you're starting at a D4, you'd have to go through a lot of rooms before you're going to get even a chance of getting up to like a 10.
Oh, that's
But
true.
so and I guess I so
So each room would have the gold die, would have its gold dice that you roll with, and then the gold number.
yeah. So these would have,
So the
and that would
goal would
be,
be higher than D4. I see what you're saying.
yeah. So then your and I see, so your goal number, because I was thinking, so like for the MacGuffin, let's say
Yeah,
if you have a D4 when you get the MacGuffin and your goal number is like 10, that's going to take a minute.
yeah,
You're going to take at least 6 rooms
to
on
get
a
there at
lucky
least. Yeah,
roll, and maybe 9. If you do supplies and it's a D10 and your roll number is a 12, then you could get that anywhere from 2 to 10 rooms. So it
yeah,
gives you some variability, but it's still like, and that actually I think is interesting too, because something like supplies you might find in 2 rooms, but you also might find in 10, and it
yeah.
you know,
That feels more accurate in a way.
I like that as a mechanical idea, because then you have a couple of different places to tweak and like twist the lever. Um, and it means that per room, per room, honestly, I think the only real tables that I think we should probably only have like 1 or 2 tables per
Yeah.
room, because I don't want it to be like overwhelming of like,
No,
oh, you
it's
go into a
true.
new
When you're
room.
flipping through many tables, it becomes a lot. Um,
Yeah.
my instinct is to always add more tables, and I guess that's what interests me about OSR. But you could either have one table of just like kind of more detailed, which has the room and the complication, or have a table for room and a table for complication.
I like the I was thinking like features,
Yeah.
and something that I was thinking too, uh and this might be, I don't know if this is stupid, and maybe this is just something that's part of features, but having somewhere in what is per room the like number of exits or whatever from the room be like explicitly stated, because I love the idea of the players getting, and I realize it doesn't matter in this
Yeah.
context, but I think a lot of times players don't know that it doesn't matter, and it feels dramatic regardless. So if you walk into a room and the GM goes, there's 3 doors, pick one. um that can feel dramatic.
That is
However, you can
true.
run into some downsides with that too if you don't know what's behind the 3 doors. So
I hmm. I think it would change it slightly because then you get into like I think as long as the players were mapping it out like in a little web thing, it would work because it could be a little harder to run to GM.
sure,
But
yeah,
I think I think that would my gut would be like that would be a part of features. Just have like
yeah.
every like brief description, other statistics of the room, and then how many exits it has.
Well, and I guess maybe that only needs to be a thing on some, because most rooms can be assumed to only be one way.
Yeah.
And then we could say like, oh, and here you have a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And we could maybe do some fun stuff with that, where like the fork in the road, it says what the next 2 rooms are or something like that. That's
Mm.
kind of a neat idea. Um, because that could get to the idea of what I'm saying or the thing that I like without having to like make it overly complicated.
Yeah.
Because I do agree that that gets kind of complicated, and that gets into like, why aren't you just making the map ahead of time?
Yeah.
Which, like, there are a lot of reasons I'm not making it ahead of time. Fuck off. I don't like what he's.
Who's got
Uh,
time for that?
yeah. What do you mean? But Yeah, okay. So, but I like that idea of like a fork in the road. I think that is fun. Okay, so I need to write down your idea that you mentioned of all of the tables except probably the goal table.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Although it could be as well. It would just be, I think, hard to make a D20 tables.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you really got very granular. It would be interesting to have just like three three to five goals and then a bunch of blank spaces so you could write in more specific goals.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Because I'm like,
So
if you play any like kind of dungeon crawler or sort of game long enough, you're gonna be like, okay, here's another quest, let's do it. And like you
yeah,
can't plan that out always. Sometimes it's kind of like, oh, we really like this blacksmith. Let's get him some bacon. And
yeah,
like it doesn't you can't predict it. It doesn't always make sense.
we got to go hunt the hogs in the labyrinth because
Yeah.
the blacksmith wants bacon or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting question around this. Does the GM start with D1s and rolling those on all the tables, and every new dungeon crawl they go up a die category?
Like every new room or every dungeon crawl. That's
No,
interesting.
like every dungeon crawl, they would go up a die category for the theme, inhabitants, complication, and goals.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Because then, and that's also really interesting if, like, what you were saying for goals, you could start with the MacGuffin,
Hmm.
because that intros you into the world, intros you to the MacGuffin idea, and then every dungeon crawl, you'd have a chance of going back to the MacGuffin, but
Oh,
you'd
yeah.
also over time you'd it kind of implies that you're going on more dungeon crawls as you get more comfortable with it because you're
Yeah.
doing more between, um which is kind of fascinating. I don't and maybe it just ignores the goals table and we just ignore that idea, but for all of the others it creates this interesting thing where we could towards the bottom of the table we could start with these very like simplistic ideas,
And then get weirder and more
slowly
complex.
grow into complex stuff.
I like that. It really kind of goes back and into the idea of like seasons and growth and progression.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I gotta admit, my brain's beginning to explode a bit with all
It's
this
a pretty
potential. This is
expansive
like
idea.
it's just growing bigger and bigger, and there are more branches and ideas. And
Well, we're very so I will say that uses all 20 die pretty effectively. Do we want to be a little bit more measured with the die that we're using for stats for our players? Because we could just be like, okay, we're going to use pretty standard die for the players.
I think standard die makes sense because
Sure.
I just don't want to be that guy asking my player to bring a D19. Um,
Yeah. What do you mean? What's the problem with that?
I mean, you can do it, but it's not going
Yeah.
to happen.
uh yeah, I mean, I think um I think that means that our three stats should probably what is it? Maybe like D12, D8, D4 or
Yeah,
D12, D8,
some
D6 or something.
yeah. I think D4, D8, D12 just go in increments of four.
Yeah, it just that feels more right than being like than doing like D12, D10, D8. I don't know, that just doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah, interesting.
But that also fills out stats. So like that makes stuff pretty easy. Do we want separate damage dice?
Okay, now here we go get into the the gritty stuff I keep forgetting to pay attention to. That's a great question. Um,
Because resolution we can do, and so if you're like I'm gonna attack you, that like is fine, and it could just be whatever you rolled is the damage you do if it
hmm.
succeeds. or it's just the die goes down one.
Yeah, or we could do. And there's several ways we could do it with like each character has a different damage dice, each weapon, etc., etc.
Yeah, we could get real crazy with it if we wanted.
It could get bananas. Um,
I sort of think that combat should be somewhat standardized. And
yeah.
if we're going to use like a die category, so I'm just thinking like if you're going to fight something, if there's like a, let's just pick a goblin since we're like at least pseudo fantasy here.
Hmm.
If you're going to fight a goblin and you roll strength, so you roll a d12 and I set it to like 8 and you pass 8. So you succeed to attack this goblin. My big question then is what is what are you damaging on the goblin? And my gut
Mm,
reaction there is that every like enemy should just have a single die that they use.
yeah, I think that's fair.
And maybe it's
Um,
just every enemy is a d8, or maybe it's like depends, right? Like maybe we adjust it.
I would think,
Um
yeah, like have weaker enemies be a like a D4, a stronger
sure.
D12.
We can go in jumps of 4 and have our weird die mostly be used for the dungeon side.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess there's no d16, but whatever. Um we can
We can
avoid
make it
that.
a D16. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, and we can also avoid it if we decide we need to. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so combat can then be enemies slash obstacles. The nice thing about that is it works for obstacles too. Have a single die when you're attacking an enemy. Do you think that enemy should roll their single die, or do you think that for like their defense number, or do you think it should be set by the GM, which is like the standard sort of
For
thing?
their defense number, like what you're hitting, like what you're trying to match, or
Yeah, yeah. My only issue with rolling it is the time. I don't I that's something I've always hated in like RPGs that do like the both sides roll, or like both
yeah.
sides roll defense or whatever, or attack and
I
defense.
admittedly kind of like the Karn where it just like there is no rolling for AC or whatever. You hit and you deal damage.
We could use the static number of the die as the amount you have to beat.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So then if it's like a goblin with a D4, you have to beat a 4 to
Yeah,
hit them, which I think that's pretty reasonable if they're like a little guy.
if they're, I'm not sure about. I just I do worry that like roll to hit slows things down.
My thought process was we just get rid of damage if we're going to do that, and then your rolled amount is the amount that's done to their.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Although we could, instead of having it roll your stat, it could be roll whatever your item is. If we want items to have stats, like what you were saying, where like you could have a sword be like a D7 or whatever. But it almost feels to me like instead of having items be dice,
Hmm.
items could maybe be bonuses to a stat.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was items is a whole nother thing I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where like, because then you don't have to worry about like damage dice. You can just be like, okay, and I guess if we're saying that hits are I didn't even think about this, but I wasn't thinking about the math side of this. But if we're saying hits are rolling higher, then you're always going to kill them if you roll higher, because
Yeah,
that's their whole pool of health, quote unquote. So I guess maybe it's just any roll does that amount of damage, but that doesn't really make sense because then there's no misses.
yeah.
Interesting.
That might be something we come back to. We muddle on
Yeah.
later. Because I've got you mentioned the vague fantasy of the theming and setting, and I have a pitch for you.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. You are a town on atop the trash heap at the end of time.
Okay.
and the title of it is called Top of the Heap. And you're just at this massive, like this quantum nexus dumping ground.
That's a great title.
Thank you. And you're just kind of like, so it's a bit of a mishmash of genres and time periods. I mean, if you
Oh, that's
want
a
it, you could
great,
just be
yeah.
like you're inside whatever dimension the bag of holding goes to.
Sure, yeah. Can
So
we
it's
can we
just
change it back to mobster? That actually is really funny in this context. Because
yeah,
then he's like the mobs. You've got the mobster, you've got the champion, you've got the bishop. Like
yeah,
they like are kind of incongruent in a way that's like really funny in that context.
yeah. No, I say lean into the kind of, because if we're going into this just this ever changing structure, my thoughts were like, well, you could have your mysterious monolith, but if you're like always just like trying to find odd job, like weird stuff, I'm like, what if it's just trash? Like this weird kind of like structure made out of everything cobbled together that's ever been made.
Okay, and then the town is called the Heap.
Yes.
And the mysterious monolith stops the heap from falling apart.
Well, I was thinking like the heap is built on top of this. It's like built on top of just this structure that's made of trash, basically.
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. But I was just thinking, I was thinking like in the context of like this quantum nexus dumping
Oh
ground
yeah,
thing. I was thinking like if the mysterious monolith like goes dead, then it all falls apart and like yeah,
oh yeah. So there's this thing, yeah, like a quantum singularity or whatever that has to be sustained.
yeah. And so, what do we call the adventurers here? It's got to be something a little bit weird, a
Yeah.
little bit wacky.
Hmm.
Top of the Heap is such a good name.
I'm thinking
God
like
damn.
what is like trash pickers, rag pickers, pickers,
Pickers is pretty
salvagers,
good.
pickers.
Honestly, I think just Pickers is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little vulture kind of like you're scavenging through.
So Pickers routinely go out into the maze of trash to find supplies, strange arcane power sources.
Yeah. So I guess the theming would be kind of like what's the word, like dungeon punk or whatever, where it's like what if we took all the fantasy themes but just like took it to its most ridiculous conclusion and got
Yeah.
rid of the medieval pseudo medieval.
No, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so top of the heap, town on the top on the trash heap atop the end of time, quantum nexus dumping ground, mysterious monolith that stops the heap in like proper noun the heap, that's the name of the town,
Hmm.
from falling apart. Pickers routinely go out into the maze of trash to find supplies and strange arcane power sources to keep the monolith going. You are a party of pickers who call the heap home.
Yes.
Damn, that was a killer idea.
Thank you.
Uh, so that gives a lot of great framing to come up with complications and
Hmm.
goals and stuff. So I don't know that we want to spend our time like building out these D20 tables here because that's something that we can like, start to throw together,
Yeah, I don't know if that'd
outside
make
of
good
this.
listening, but it would be
No,
really
yeah.
fun to write.
And it's also like sometimes kind of boring to come up with too. So,
Yeah,
um
you can only do so many hallways until it gets old.
well, and also just mostly that it takes time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what in this context, is there anything else that you think needs to be in the sort of around town phase?
Interesting. So the around town phase so far is like useful for getting goals. Oh, here's an interesting. This would make it even more complicated. I feel like we're building systems on systems. But what if the
We only have an hour. We can cut it down later.
okay, thank goodness.
System wise, not like
Yeah, oh, yeah,
well,
yeah.
both the podcast and the system.
Yeah, yeah. What if the characters bought the dungeon upgrades?
Oh, so the dungeon starts at like a D1, but you buy like a better die so that you can.
See
So
more of the dungeon, yeah.
you're thinking like upgrade their gear, and that means that they can see more of the dungeon and get better rewards.
I
And
don't.
mechanically, that upgrades the die.
Yeah, I'm. I guess what would that look like in the story is interesting. I guess
Well,
it
I
would
mean,
be gear.
you can definitely have a scene in this could also be a phase 4 thing, like post dungeon crawl,
Oh yeah,
where
yeah,
you have a scene that it's like returning to town and set and like peddling your wares or whatever.
yeah,
um and that could have like and maybe that's a maybe peddling your wares is a good, or like returning to town.
yeah. Because there's always like the like paperwork end of Dungeons and Dragons where you're like, okay, now you sell all your treasure and you cash it in and you get better gear and you level up. And I'm just kind of like, what if we condense that all to like focus back on the dungeon and like at the end of the day, that's the number that's going up.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. So I have two questions with that. First of all,
Yes.
um is there anything that you think should increase with the players specifically? Because
I
just the dungeon increasing is interesting and good in the sense they get to see more of the world, but it doesn't change anything that the players can do.
this
Oh,
is a, oh
sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
continue.
I had a Jimmy Neutron style brain blast there. You can have like 50% of it be uh upgrades for the dungeon, and then you can have 50% of it, or maybe even a smaller portion of it, maybe it can be a larger portion dungeon focused,
Mhm.
but a small portion of it be about items for the players.
I was going to say the same thing, items.
Okay.
I think items are like, especially if it's going to be like this kind of salvage punk setting, then yeah, let's just say the people like upgrade by duct taping a wand of magic missiles to your sword, and that's how you get better at things.
You, someone has like a modern rifle duct taped to their
Yeah,
sword
it
because his
just I want all I want ask in my fantasy setting is someone has a real ass gun. Um,
I I honestly think that the upgrade system should entirely focus on uh like a 1 2 3 +1 +2 +3 system.
mhm.
Like these are the bonuses to your die, and then it should be entirely about coming up with creative uses for trash.
Yes, I
So it's
agree. I
all
was like,
like
I
narrative
want,
player driven.
yeah, I want the most of the items to be like one of those like, oh, is this useless? Is this useful? Will this help? I don't know. Because those are kind of like, I think that that's the fun thing where it's just kind of like incredibly useless item that saves your life. Those are always the favorite ones in RPGs. So.
Well, and I kind of like the idea of like just saying like there's 4 items that can give you +1 here.
Yeah.
What are they to your players, and having your players be like, "Oh, I found this random item from this time period, and this is how I'm going to use it to give
No,
me a
no,
plus
that's
one."
good. That's yeah, let the players kind of flavor it. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Because that just creates this like really rich, like what you're saying. Like a player can be like, "Oh, in my D&D campaign that I played 6 years ago, I had like this funny moment with a D&D thing, and I'm gonna like tie that in here as like it came through the vortex."
Oh, that's so interesting. It's almost like I wish we got at this point earlier because it's
Me
like
too.
it's like the equivalent of when you're 6 years old and you're like, and then Spider-Man comes in with Superman and they punch Godzilla. And
Oh no, we're making the Fortnite of
yeah,
TTRPGs.
I think that's what all imagination comes down to eventually.
Sure, yeah.
And this kind of like being like the setting is everything as long as it's ridiculous. You can kind of be like, oh yeah, this was a cool dragon. Let's bring it in. Yeah. And like I think the idea of like yeah, like there is kind of like this dungeon punk aesthetic, but also bringing it open to where players can incorporate bring in ideas, I think is really fun.
Yeah, and I personally in my GMing, I love to engage what the players find exciting,
Yeah,
and
no.
I love like paint the scenes and stuff.
Oh, that's a good idea. I guess that's where I've always struggled with OSR is like how to do that and still keep the dungeon crawl processes.
This does beg the question of like what is money in this world and like what are you spending?
Oh yeah, to like upgrade the
Yeah, or to buy your +1 item or whatever. Um,
well,
so
that's a
maybe
good
that's just
point.
like a per room. Maybe that's part of our features roles.
Is like how much gold or treasure is in there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let's see. Or have it part of the complication.
Oh, interesting.
The harder the complication, the bigger the reward.
Oh, I actually really like that.
Back and then you can be like, oh, the goblins had this much money on them, or something, kind of.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Um, okay.
Yeah, I was thinking very like, oh, the room has like a golden urn in the corner, which is uh interesting because like, if there's like usually in games that have like random encounters, that's a lot of where like your like loot comes from.
Yeah,
So it makes way more sense in the comp. Although I guess you could have a little bit of it in both, right? Like
yeah. I think a little bit in both makes sense. I
yeah,
also
that's
think currency should be referred to as SOs, shiny objects,
oh
or something of a similar gist. Because I do think it's just kind of like it's you live on a quantum trash heap. It's what's currency is whatever is interesting or useful.
yeah. That I was kind of thinking about that too, is like what defines money in this world.
Yeah, I think it's whatever you could use to staple wands of magic missiles to your swords with.
Or is like deemed to be pretty or exciting by
Yeah,
people within the world, right?
yeah. So I think it would be a broad category.
Yeah. Uh damn, this is so okay, so just starting from the top and giving like a quick scan downwards. So I want to
Oh
do a
yes, yes.
sort
Sorry.
of a quick scan and give us like kind of where are we right now, and then we can kind of talk about is there anything big that that we think we're missing in terms of like a sort of if you were going to try to run this system, right? Other than
Um,
like obviously the roll tables need some fleshing out if you're going to
yeah,
try to
yeah.
run
So
this
I
based
think
on
some nooks and
what we've set
crannies
this
need
up.
fleshing out, but we got a basis.
So we've got top of the heap with
Mhm.
a little bit of the setting info, and I think all of that is pretty good and pretty spicy. Strong archetypal classes, so close knit party, family, friends are similar. They're all people who live
Yeah,
on the
in
heap.
the trash town. Yeah.
Exploding dice, we didn't really talk about it that much anywhere. I just put it as a big note at the top. So in a like full game system, we could talk about it more.
Yeah, it would be
Um,
more go through how we talk about how we apply it.
Yeah, and the champion has their oath,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they are strongest on strength.
Mm-hmm.
The mobster has cunning, and they're strongest on dexterity. The bishop has holy, which is maybe not the correct word to have there, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
And they're strongest
something.
on will. And the hermit has magic, and they're also strongest on will, but they have a different breakdown in their other two stats.
Yeah.
Um, And then we have a brief little thing on combat. I think this is one of the few places where we need more, but I think this is something that we should probably spend some time and think about before
Yeah,
we like flesh it
combat's
out more.
tricky. Always
And
is.
it's enemies slash obstacles have a single die, like a single die stat.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out how rolling against that works and
Mhm.
how damage works there.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that is like kind of functional, and it allows them to have a single die that they roll against you with, which works
Mhm.
pretty well. Uh, Combat damages your unique die. When it reaches 0, you die and are unconscious slash whatever. However,
And
when you go down, you roll a d3, then a d2, then a d1. But if you ever roll the highest number, you die. So when you hit the d1, you always roll the highest number and you'll die for real.
yes.
Uh, we've got our little around town scene before you go into the dungeon crawl
Mhm.
with some vignettes for each player, scenes on how they relate to each other or to the heap. And then the actual dungeon crawl, where the dungeon will use die to sort of generate the theme, the inhabitants, complications, and what your goals are. And then we have each goal having a die related to it and a goal number. So that kind of like sets a limit to the number of rooms,
How
sort
deep
of
you're gonna go? Yeah.
semi limit. Yeah. And then, like what you said, kind of more of a depth crawl almost, but along multiple sessions
Mhm.
rather than in a single one. Um, and then we talked about this sort of returning to the heap and peddling your wares, where
Mhm.
you sell all of your or take all your shiny objects back to the heap, and you upgrade your dungeon. And I just wrote down like better travel, better gear, like
Better
stuff like
something.
that. So like whatever you're like traveling on. Like you previously were traveling on like a bicycle and now you buy a jet ski because you're going
Yeah.
into a wet area. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
no. Something that's unlocking more things.
Yeah, and then those each would increase the die category for the dungeon. So,
Yeah.
and maybe you have a lot of shiny objects and you can buy multiple.
Mhm.
Um, and that's also kind of cool because that means that as you get a better chance to go deeper into the dungeon, you might get more loot, and then you might be able to go deeper faster.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
nice synergy there.
yeah. And then you also have the chance to buy those upgrade items, which would give like a +1, 2, or 3 on your rolls on specific stats.
Mhm.
And those would be decided by the player for like what they actually are. Any any big areas you feel like you're missing other than combat in here for like the idea of the system if you were going to go run it?
I
Because
think this is good.
I think it's really just like combat and
Yeah.
fleshing out the tables, and then I would just have to play it to see where it needs to go
I'm
from
I'm
there.
intrigued by it. I gotta say, combat's always the thing I think about the least. So,
For sure, yeah. No,
but
I get
this
that.
is like I think it's got some things that make it compelling.
I really like the setting. That's a very cool idea. And it we were kind of like dabbling around sort of that vibe.
Yeah,
But you really nailed some of the ideas that we were talking about in a similar
yeah.
vibe.
As we got more ideas of what the mechanics looked like and like what we wanted, how we wanted the dungeon to feel, I think that really the dungeon mechanics kind of explained the setting in a way.
Yeah, yeah. No, it definitely did sort of feedback, which is always really cool when it happens.
Yeah,
Well, this has been great, Charlie. I'm excited to see where all of this goes. I I think this is the first time where we've like fully fleshed out a name that is this good in the middle of recording. So I'm excited to see. And this also probably has some of the most work to be done after the fact with like the
yeah.
number of roll tables that we have set ourselves up for here. But I'm excited to bang those out. So
Same.
um, where can people find you?
Okay, so I can be found as Capacity for Wonder at itch.io, at capacityforwonder.itch.io. I will have a full website with more information and stuff, and look at my art and design under the same name, Capacity for Wonder. It's not published yet, so we can link in the show notes, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. That Works for me. And I'll put a link in the show notes to your itch page too. You have some really
Yes.
cool stuff on there, so people should 100% go check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get this all thrown together and see
Yeah.
where it comes to. Uh, I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this, and I hope you're excited about this game as well. If you guys want to check it out, it will be up on the Story Games Chicago itch.io page, and potentially the Capacity for Wonder itch.io page as well. And you can download it and check it out there. Follow along for our next episodes. This is probably going to be our last episode of the season, but join us again for our next season of Game Storm, and follow Story Games Chicago on Blue Sky, and you can check out all of our other games on itch, and you can check out the Story Games Chicago website if you want to follow along on our Substack or anything else. So I'm again Chase Krakowski, and you can find me on Blue Sky at CH Kirk. And thank you guys for tuning in and joining us as we build Top of the Heap. I'm excited to see where it goes. So we'll see you again next season. Bye, everyone.